We have one last session now, and it's really, I'm excited, and I'm actually honored to introduce someone who I would argue doesn't need an introduction. But our guest today is the writer, creator, executive producer, and director of Mad Men, and one of television's most acclaimed series. And since all of us, for the most part in this room, are in the advertising and media industry, it's something close to the heart of many of us, I imagine. He also worked, though, as a writer and executive producer, if you did not know, on The Sopranos, and obtained an unbelievable number of awards. If you have a chance to look up his background, it's actually phenomenal how well he's done, along with several comedy series, and he made his feature film debut in 2014. He's got a couple projects he's working on now, but because he's had, and this is a content creator, so much tremendous body of work, and he's worked across so many different things, we thought he could bring a unique view to what's happening in our industry, separate from the advertising and media professionals that are typically in our audience and our clients today. As a program creator for both traditional and emerging platforms, he has a front row seat to the disruption that's occurring in the topics that were just discussed up here in content consumption. So we look forward to hearing more from our esteemed guest. So if you will, please give a warm round of applause for Matthew Weiner. Thank you.
Expecting me to come up the front?
Exactly. Thanks, Matthew.
Nice.
We're going to come sit down over here. Where would you like to sit?
I'll sit over here in the bordello. It's like a...
I know, this is a cool little stage setup,
It's
right?
fantastic.
I like the casualness. So first off, thank you so much for joining us. It's an honor to have
I'm glad
you
to be here. Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it. So as you know, for the most part, this is an advertising and media professional organization, the group of people in here. And they're reasonably familiar with the explosion of options for viewing entertainment.
Right.
Right. And you've been at the core of that. So what's interesting is that so much has happened in the past 10 years, even especially in the past 5. So if I look back, my understanding is that Mad Men, it first aired in 2007.
Yes.
Right.
It'll be the 10-year anniversary in July.
10-year anniversary in July. So
that was fast.
Look back at that, 10 years ago, the iPhone went out in 2007.
The iPhone was not out. The iPad was not out. The web streaming, the conventional wisdom that the audience, not that there was a technological issue, but the audience wouldn't watch anything longer than 3 minutes on a streaming platform.
And that was and
Netflix I looked back. My Gmail account started during the pilot for Mad Men.
Okay. So I
got an invitation to a thing called Gmail.
That's amazing. 10 years. And what we've noticed is that things like Netflix going from mail order DVD to streaming changed a lot of the iPhone being released, changed so much in the television industry.
My parents learning how to use iTunes. Seriously, there are all these things that happen technologically where you sort of start looking at it, and it's funny because I obviously was listening a little bit, and the same sort of your disruption's a great word for it, and I don't know how else to say it except for there's more television original programming right now. I think there's something like over 400 scripted series, and there's no way to not look at these different platforms and the way things moved from network TV to pay TV to basic cable, then to SVOD, which is Netflix, then to Amazon, which is Netflix's major competitor, to Google now getting into it. Apple obviously will eventually get into it. All of these different things are opportunities. They're opportunities for writers, for sure.
So how's it changed, given that it used to just be broadcast television? How has that changed your business?
The downside of it is the upside is there's more jobs than ever. There's more opportunities than ever. The downside is there's more people who don't know what they're doing running things. And there's more executives than ever. And that sort of business had sort of squeezed down and kind of disappeared at a certain point, and everybody's like, I don't know. I had 2 executives at AMC. They were both had high-risk attitudes. And then as soon as we did Mad Men and then Breaking Bad, same executives, then there was an explosion of executives at AMC. And everything just sort of became more, I don't know what to say. I mean, I don't ever want the job of having to pick shows and decide what they are, but there is a certain idea. I mean, I wrote mine on spec, which means no one paid me. I went in and pitched it a couple places, and and even once it was written, I would have people say things to me like, "This is the best pilot I've ever read. Do you watch TV?" Do you know what's on TV? Like, we're not gonna like. And what really was the thing that freed it up, in addition to the technological part of it, and I think they're related to each other, was the international market. The international market was always a huge part of it. I sort of explained, I don't know if anybody is interested in this part of like how the television business has changed.
They will.
Okay, so they probably know this, but basically the way it used to be is you'd have a studio, Warner Brothers, they would make a deal with writers, actors, and so forth. They'd make a pilot, they would sell the pilot to a network, let's say they're doing Friends, they sell it to NBC. NBC takes it to the upfronts. They get an order for it. They start making the show. The show gets very large ratings. They order more of it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, NBC buys it and pays like 60, 70% of the expense of making the show for the rights to air it for the first time, and as much as they want. Warner Brothers retains the rights to own the show and sell it to Channel 5, Channel 11, Europe, Australia, et cetera, Latin America. So what happened is that those laws were changed, broken down, so that NBC could make things by themselves and sell them everywhere. But they don't really have international distribution, so they're still taking their shows and selling them to, HBO, which will distribute them in Latin America. So, and then the partnerships are always there to change the risk, right? HBO does not make Game of Thrones by themselves. They pay for about half of it, and then half of it is, and then it's sold all over the world, and they sell it in some territories. HBO sells Mad Men in some territories. So this international distribution started, and now is at, I believe, close to 75% of the value of a show. So that distribution part of it. And when you sell that to another place, you have partners. So Warner Brothers has a partner on Friends, which is, besides executive producers, mostly Marta Kaufman and David Crane and Kevin Bright, who created the show. And they're entitled to quite a bit when you hear about Jerry Seinfeld getting paychecks from from syndication of Seinfeld. That's Channel 5. This is the same thing, works internationally. So the new distribution model, and everybody's wondering, how is Netflix going to sustain this?
Yes.
So the new distribution model is Netflix, you go take your show into Netflix, they give you the budget of the show plus 25%, right? So if it costs $10 million, they're going to give you $12.5 million. I'm not good at math, but something like that. And that's it. As an owner, you're bought out.
You're done. So you're the
done.
creator, and you don't have any more rights.
And they just happened to not have to sell it anywhere, because they have a presence in every territory in the world. So the idea that if you have a show that succeeds, it's a 30-year business, the content part of it, they have secured. And they do this in other places. So believe it or not, I'm sure that we will all at some point be getting into, they have South Korea has an incredible film, culture, TV culture, et cetera. I guarantee you that there's some show that's going to be being made there that will end up becoming a hit on US Netflix. They own it. That's the way it works. So the idea of like what's going to happen, I mean, we talked about this before. I have no idea. I don't want to pretend like I do, but I can say that from what's happened in the past, that basic cable was an opportunity of lower costs because there were special deals made with the unions to lower residuals, to encourage people to make shows on basic cable. Okay. The budgets are lower. And then there's this double dipping property, which is that you're paying for the cable. The old idea of like you're going to watch the advertising and that's your payment. You get a free TV in exchange for watching the ads. And how do you get people to actually watch the ads? And then the DVR comes along. It's a very complicated thing. But with basic cable, you are paying for the signal to come into your house and you're getting the ads. And the ads are much cheaper for people to buy, because the shows are cheaper and because ad rates were different on basic cable, and then all of a sudden the audiences started to explode, and you start having things where there's the overlap. I'm sure some of you took advantage of this, but towards the end of Mad Men and the end of Breaking Bad, you're getting network level audiences for basic cable prices. And then of course everything started going up, the carriage fees, everything, they started making their money millions of different ways. But how do you reach people? I don't know. I had two pieces of news. One was, right after we got off the phone, we found out that there was an announcement that there's more Netflix subscribers than DVR owners in the United States. That's interesting. Not troubling for you guys. And then I watched Feud on FX, which is a basic cable show. I'm sure it had a huge audience. I don't know what the numbers were for it. I can't tell. The whole number thing is very confusing to me. I'm watching shows that are like number 1 or number 2 that I would have been canceled in like 15 minutes when I started out working. So you're like, I can't believe the audience is smaller. I just don't. I don't know. Maybe we weren't counting well before. Tell you one thing. We never did a show about the Nielsen Company. I never. It's just one of the. It's like the Vatican. Just don't mess with them. I was like, we talked about the Nielsen Diaries at one point, but it's kind of like, they're an inventory measuring company, and they have what they are, and we all agree that that's what this gold standard is. So anyway, so they have, I don't know what the ratings are, but we ended up missing it. I had not DVR'd it because I rarely get the remote in my house. I have 4 sons, 3 at home, and we ended up watching it on basically the free SVOD download.
Got it.
And you probably know this, that for the first time in a long time, I'm watching ads that I cannot skip past. I could mute them. I could run to the bathroom if I knew how long they were, the Lucy effect, right? Remember how they said the water pressure went down? But they're locked in. And in exchange for me being able to watch the show whenever the hell I want to. So there's this thing that's going on that's very strange, which is that people will pay the premium to not see the ads. At the same time, the technology is a way to embed ads that can't be skipped past. And I think that the audience, in a strange way, and I think that it was a little bit, I hate to be critical of, and this, the tolerance level is a great factor in your work. It's why ads can be entertaining. Not all good ads are entertaining. Some ads are ads, and that's a more complicated thing than I'm just an observer. I'm a forensic specialist. I don't make ads. But I feel like the audience's tolerance right now is the highest it's been in my lifetime. I don't really even hear negative things about like, oh, it was loaded with ads, or my kids watch things on YouTube and Google and so forth, and they don't even close the windows on the ad. They'll just watch it. They'll load something up and they'll be, hold on a second. We'll just wait for the ad. They will never press skip. They don't do anything. And so it's almost like the olden days at the baseball stadium, with the billboards in the fence. I think that they really can. But I think watching Feud like this, it was getting on my nerves. Because it also was spaced out, and Hulu does this also. It was also spaced out in the old, and I used to yell at AMC about this also, in the old geometric pattern of The Late Show, where you're going to get a half hour of solid entertainment, and then the most important part where you really want to see the ending is going to be broken up 30 times.
Right.
So they're savvy, but I don't know how you reach people. I just know for a content provider, this is an exciting moment because there's just like, Tina Fey made a joke a few years ago about her new series for Snapchat, and it got a huge laugh. And that's like, I'm sure that's going to happen this year.
Right.
Not Tina Fey, but somebody's going to do it. Yeah.
Right, someone's going to do it. So it's been, from your perspective as a content creator, the explosion of opportunities has actually created a new opportunity in many respects.
Yes.
If that makes sense. It's not actually harder. I shouldn't say harder. It's not as difficult necessarily. It used to be you had a few places to go to take your content. Now you have many more. Is that the way to look at this thing now?
It's not just that. It's a tolerance for something like The Sopranos having this huge cultural impact, making billions. Okay, just so you know, the television business is the largest business in the United States. It's $49 billion in profit last year. I'm not saying it's going to grow like that every year, and I'm sure it's due to be taken down a peg, or who knows what's going to happen, but the expansion is gigantic. And so what happens is there's an opportunity, clearly, to make money off of a smaller audience, a smaller domestic audience especially, which used to be the measure of everything. When 75% of the revenue coming in for a TV show is coming in from outside the United States, I was joking earlier, like Venezuela has no government and 3 channels, right? You can sell these things, and they do. If you make 10 episodes for the right price, which is not a tiny amount, you're in profit right away. And if you can get them to order it if you can promise 5 years of it, it really has to fail in a strange way. It has to fail in such a spectacular way. It's like B movies. Warner Brothers or what a studio would make an A picture and they'd send it out for international distribution. And if you wanted the A picture, you had to pay, let's say it was, make up a number, whatever, 30x, all right, 300, okay? They would make you pay $5 or just throw them in 5 other movies that were stinkers.
Got it.
And write them off altogether and basically sell them all for $300 or whatever it is.
Right.
So the real difference was the realization from The Sopranos that a small audience that is not acceptable on network TV, that is not everybody, you're not making a show that appeals to everybody or trying to, as if there is such a show. I'm saying this as someone who, there's no one in my house who watches the Super Bowl. So not everything appeals to everybody.
Right.
But if you stop thinking that way and you can make money in that niche, it's like independent film. And HBO was the business. 30 million homes when there are 300 million televisions at that time, and they are the most successful one. Because the people who watch it are willing to pay for it. And their measurement is not necessary because it's like a gym membership. You don't even need to know how many people are watching it. All you know is that, are they canceling HBO when The Sopranos goes off the air? Okay, well, some percentage of that. Are they coming back and signing up for it again? And they would straddle the months. It was definitely a subscription-based service, right? And then the DVDs and all that is extra. But as soon as you saw that on AMC that we could have an embarrassing number, right, of like a 1.9 and be getting to 1.9 and have the same audience in the demographic of the highest rated show on network TV, which was like 1.5. 1.5 of our 1.9 was the same as the 1.5 in the biggest show on network TV. So that is where the freedom really came in, as people started to take advantage of that. And I think, and then what happens with everything when there's a boom like this? They're gonna wear it out. They're exhausting our attention span. The novelty is wearing off. Our kids, who knows what their relationship to television is going to be. That's the thing that I sort of think is like, well, this is strange. They certainly don't know the difference between TV and a movie. They know what a movie theater is, but they certainly don't know the difference between like what's a TV show and what's a movie in terms of like their appetite for it.
Right.
And honestly, you say, oh, you can get it. There's 92 hours of Mad Men. You're competing against somebody watching The Incredibles 42 times.
Right.
Right?
Right.
It's, you know what I mean? They don't even watch new things that much.
Sight, sound, emotion is what it is, and it's not the distinction between TV shows or a movie. So your comment about Netflix, it's interesting. In the old days, everyone had to make their money, let's go back a couple of decades, to domestic-based reach.
Right.
And the advertising model here and the subscription model here.
Right.
What you're now saying is that international distribution, because it's 75% of the economics, allows people to make narrower targeted audience shows.
Yes.
Mad Men was a great show because not only was it narrowly targeted audience, but it was a very desirable audience.
That's what I'm talking about.
That was the key
audience.
there. But in general, it's the whole idea of international distribution that's actually monetized this fragmentation we're experiencing, because it's kind of an important thing to understand. So
but it is dependent on success in the U.S.
Okay.
I shouldn't act like it doesn't matter. It's very rare that someone's going to come from France and buy something that bombed here.
Okay, got it. Right. So success in the U.S.
Yes, and if you can get some groundswell on a show, if Americans are watching this, if this is seen as successful, prestige American TV, it's going to take off there. But the audience is so sophisticated all over the world anyway.
Right.
And part of that's, you never know how technology is going to change things. Subtitling. Like, you tell me that you could launch a show to an American audience anywhere with subtitles in it. Never happened.
Right.
And then you have Narcos, you have things being made this way, you have us watching Spiral and French TV, and it's just kind of like, and it's the same way abroad. Right. They're maybe more used to it, or it's dubbed or something like that, but it's incredible to me how open we are to different kinds of material, forgetting about like content, anti-heroes and all this other stuff that people talk about. But I do feel like we're getting a chance to see the entire history of television right now. They're trying everything just to stand out. So it's many opportunities, and you're probably not going to get canceled. You're probably not going to get paid the way you would if you were working on network TV. The salaries are lower. They stretch the jobs out over long periods of time. More writers working for less money. on more shows. And, you know, Stranger Things, you know, you'd all like to be part of that audience. You can't get to them because Netflix doesn't advertise. But my personal theory, what I told you, is
let's
that,
talk about that.
like the same way basic cable was, AMC was a channel with no, this is just an observation. I am not a spokesman for them. No one there has told me this. This is just what I watched happen. AMC was a channel like Turner Classic Movies, as you recall at some point. Some of you know this. They showed classic movies with no commercials in them. Then they exhausted their reach into all of the cable companies that existed and started monetizing their films. They lost a lawsuit because they were on the same cable system as Turner Classic Movies to call themselves a classic movie channel because Turner had this deal, and to show some of the movies. And so the movies changed. Then they're panned and scanned. Then they are blown up. Then they're cut up. Then they're shown with commercials. So when we get there, I don't know that I'm sure they're making money, but their image is very bad. They have like a negative relationship with cable's TV subscribers. This is what I was told. So what
because
can they
ad
do?
load and
Because of
chopping
ad
up.
load and chopping up the movies and basically taking an audience. They had an amazingly loyal audience that became completely disgusted with them.
Right.
It's whatever. So original programming was a chance. They're going to start getting dropped by cable companies, right?
Right.
And their carriage fee is nothing. You all understand how that works, right? So no one wants to pay for AMC. They bundle it in with channels you like, and some of them are just dropping it. So their idea of creating original programming to make them desirable, to change their image, and they bought a bunch of new movies too, which was pretty amazing. They bought The Godfather. I've got a chance to meet Clint Eastwood, and I told him that I always wanted to work with him, but the closest I could come was being on AMC, because it's all Clint Eastwood movies.
Yes.
And so Jerry Maguire, you know, it sounds like whatever. For those of you who are in programming, that was like buying basketball for a channel like that.
Okay, got
You
it.
buy The Godfather, the rights to show The Godfather on TV. I know that there's DVDs. I know there's everything else like that, but no one flips by The Godfather. They just don't.
Right.
So what happened is that was their expansion. So my feeling is about Netflix, my guess is while they're growing in the near range, which would probably, it could be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, they can continue going on the subscriber-based thing that they're doing. And it is a bottomless pit of success as long as and they're really good because there's scarcity. It's not an overwhelming, you know, interface. They do take things off and everybody gets mad, but there's not that much on there. Amazon has everything, but their original programming is doing the same thing. They're bringing a sort of branding to them. They're bringing people into Amazon. They throw it in for free with the Amazon Prime, which keeps you in their world. They have access to your email all the time. You're on the radar. They can advertise to you. They're now in the movie business in a way that Netflix has not even gotten close to. They won 3 Oscars this year, Amazon.
Right.
And for me, again, on the sidelines, watching Hollywood and watching first, in my lifetime, there's been more than this, but certainly watching the comic book money come in first. And Hollywood treating them like morons and getting eaten alive. And then, then the toy people, right? Hasbro and so forth. You know, you see these people come in to see Jeff Bezos and Ted Sarandos and Google and all those people come to Hollywood, Facebook. They are so sophisticated about their business that everyone's just kind of like, they're not treating, this is not dumb money. This is a new paradigm for distribution.
Interesting.
And the distribution thing is I'm sorry, it's exciting as a consumer and it's exciting as a creator, and it has to be exciting for advertising. I mean, it's overwhelming, but I love that it seems more quality-based than ever because it's so hard to stand out. There's so much word of mouth. I don't know about reviewers. I don't know if the critics are as influential on what happens, but certainly I just was right here in the green room listening to people talking about what shows they watch.
Yeah, right. So what does it take to stand out in this proliferation of viewing options and choices that everyone has, and the fact that there's all these devices and people want content anywhere? And how do you stand out? How do you actually get seen? You know, it used to be, there was 3 shows, there was everyone tuned into one TV set, you knew it was
Right, and
viewing
everybody
was
who
there.
wasn't being watched was canceled.
Right. So how does that work now? Or as a
It's
writer,
hard because it's also not just these new shows, it's the entire history of television.
Right.
You know, don't think that my kids aren't watching The Twilight Zone.
Right. You're
They
competing
are.
with history.
Twilight Zone made like $40 million last year. With a zero investment.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's all the old methods. It's like try and do something interesting, try and do something relevant, it's all the things that are scary about business. You probably have to spend more sometimes. You know, you could end up spending money and ending up with Game of Thrones, where you spend a ton of money and you're getting it all back because it's the biggest show in the world.
Right.
Or you could spend a lot of money and end up with Cleopatra. You know, not the TV show, the movie. You know, I used to explain to people, like when we were getting our budget squeezed, I was like, I don't think we could sell Mad Men by saying this is the most expensive Mad Men episode ever. Right. But stars make a big difference. On the other hand, I mean, this is the great thing about it. All I can do, and I'm not in the choosing business, is think about what I want to watch.
Right.
And so my new show on Amazon is called The Romanoffs, and I wanted to do an anthology where you could watch the show and not have any catching up at all. Where it would be like, Black Mirror really helped me sell it because that was like, the people understood it. And all of television was like this for 20 years, by the way. Basically from 1947 to like 1967, the best drama winner was always some version of Playhouse 90 or Naked City or something like that, where it was no continuing cast. Maybe they were joined together by location, or maybe just original works put on TV. Because after World War II, Hollywood bought everything, fearing television. And New York was the center of live TV, and they basically had playwrights and the public domain, and they started doing these adaptations with actors who were here in town. Doing them live, which was always an extra element. I don't think anybody desired it. Right. And then they did them from out in the West Coast too, live like that. But there were so many anthology TV shows, and they were so successful that the Best Drama Emmy in like 1957 or 58 was actually split into Outstanding Drama Anthology and Outstanding Drama with Continuing Characters, because shows like Bonanza, and they couldn't get nominated. They couldn't win any awards.
Right. So they had to separate the two.
So, I mean, the idea that you're going to come to a TV show and expect it to be an interesting story and not see the people the next week, I'm trying to stand out in that way, just for me, because I feel like it's a bit of a chore. It's a bit of a chore to keep up with all of the shows and to, you know, some of them are not binge-worthy. You get 3 or 4 into it, and you're like, I'm wasting my time. Some of them, I mean, there's a lot of it, you know.
So how do you feel about the whole releasing the TV series all at once and this concept? So, I mean, originally with AMC.
I'm a consumer. I do like
yeah,
it.
so AMC with Mad Men, you know, people that had the water cooler buzz opportunity, you would wait, and everyone would be like, oh, did you see it last night, and things like that.
I think for the people in this room, the weekly distribution is way better for advertising. On the other hand, my original intention for Mad Men was to have a single sponsor, going back to the original model, you know, to the early television model and the radio model. And by the way, writing Mad Men, while network television was changing so much, falling apart, whatever, and writing about radio disappearing, which was much faster, I was sort of learning these things about I don't know. I mean, I guess the word of the year is pivot. Right, just learning about how people really adapted very quickly, and how they took the greatest hits of radio and put them on TV immediately, right? Even in the 50s. But I don't know how you stand out. I do know that the syndication model of like watching a show, that always supported individual kind of episodes. That always supported it. You watch everything at once. If I wanted it to be not a joke. This is more than an example. I actually asked for this. American Express or American Express Platinum presents Mad Men.
Right.
And without commercials.
Kind of like the Ed Sullivan Show, how that used
Yeah,
to
there'd
work.
be a
Right.
thing at the beginning. They would buy outdoor. They would put it on their website. They would put it during golf. They may have, and then at the end of the show, it would say American Express, whatever. It would say, or at the beginning of the show, it would have the purple card, the original American Express card, and it would say Donald Draper, member since 1960.
Right.
And I just thought, like, they don't have, and by the way, not the old model. They don't have to pay for the show. They just have to pay. I don't think Mad Men, I'm not privy to these things, but I don't think Mad Men ever made its budget in ad revenue. You know, I don't think that was really a trade. But the network would get, if you wanted to buy 30 seconds in Mad Men, you had to buy the whole week for all their shows.
Right, so they
anything else that's on there. They didn't even have other shows. Exactly.
Right. They
So
bundled
they
it
would
together.
get commitments. So maybe it did pay for their investment in the show.
a bundled
Yes.
approach, right?
Yes, and the real money for them, and, you know, and AMC is a cable company owned by Cablevision, so it was even more complex. They were more interested in just being in the homes,
Right,
you know?
right.
So that was more complicated, but
So is it a good thing that so it sounds like binge watching and that releasing all the episodes at once is
don't
not
know.
necessarily as good for the advertising community.
I don't know. I mean, if you were sponsoring it, you know, if it was Netflix presents Stranger Things with, you know, the Hard Rock Cafe, or brought to you by, you know, Universal Studios or something like that, I do think that's going to happen at some point.
Okay.
And there's so much space on the platform for just a card. But also, you know, it's different for different products. You guys know this. Like some products, like if the Wonder Mop had brought you Mad Men, it's probably not as good as like
Right.
someone who is more image conscious. When we did finally talk about getting into business and product placement with American Express, they were like, we're not, it was in the middle of the credit, it was like 2009. They're like, we do not want to talk about credit cards or debt. I was like, but American Express isn't a credit card. You have to pay it off, at least I do. And they're like, well, we have lots of products, and we don't want to see the credit card, and it's not a good environment for that. I don't know if it's the agency or American Express. You can talk about anything else. And we ended up, for no money at all, actually, just because I liked it and I thought it was nostalgic, having Sally Draper have traveler's checks.
Right.
Something that really seems like, just seeing the props, I was just like, oh my God. You know what it's like? It's like holding a stock certificate.
Right.
It feels like so, like you're in some very, very old Western, old-timey movie. And Sally Draper asked the question that we always asked, if you have to countersign it and someone could steal it, your signature's already on there.
Yeah.
It's like it's forge friendly. But American Express, they know more than I do.
So
But anyway, I think that would be a way to deal with binging, is
Right.
to just give your patina to a show.
Did the whole thing.
And the same thing with product placement. It's like, you know, you don't want your product in a bad environment, obviously.
Right.
But we did product placement on the show, and I always found it was like super complicated. It was super complicated to explain the rules that went with being on Mad Men, which means mentioning your competitors and so forth. But I know that the people that I told you this, that with Jaguar, who
Right.
had no financial relationship with us, and who would let you do that, anyone who knows the show, they would never let you do that. But it was very, very good for them.
Right.
Along the old lines. Well, they should have paid us. They did end up having Christina Hendricks go up and sell their new line. She showed up at the rally, and I was like, oh, that is crazy. Because I know I couldn't have gotten anything good or bad past they took the clients out to, the client went to a whorehouse, and then the car didn't start, and then everything, we did 7 or 8 stories with Jaguar. By the way, the real owner of Jaguar at that period it was 5 owners away from the people who own it now.
Right.
But a brand is a brand. You don't want to mess with it. And there was not one script I could have gotten past an agency or a legal department or anything. But in the end, there was a boom. So if people are more creative about their relationships with content, I think it's, I tell you one thing, I don't know if they sold any Xboxes by putting Nickelodeon on there and Netflix on those kinds of deals. Just getting involved in the platforms themselves is an opportunity. It's, I remember the awareness of the TV Guide channel, that you would turn your TV on. They still do this with cable systems and maybe DirecTV. When you turn it on, you're on a channel that has a guide on it, and that moment is going to be seen. Like, you can't get out of it. You just turned on the TV. So that's like from a consumer's point of view.
Does binge watching, because you don't have the water cooler effect, will that actually reduce total consumption, you think, or unique reach, if you will, of a content? Because, right, it's like everyone's in their silos. There's no. Or is
would
it not
like
have an
to
impact?
think that the social aspects of entertainment are going to return. We don't know how technology is consumed when it's invented. And the idea that you can walk around with your headset on and watch a TV show by yourself is fine. But I can tell you, just from my boys watching stupid YouTube videos or whatever else it is, or music videos or anything like that, or their shows, yes, it's possible to watch TV alone. It always has been, by the way. And the binge experience can be done with couples or what else it is, but the idea of the word of mouth that goes with advertising, if your message can be received then, but the word of mouth that goes with advertising, of literally people, of an ad catching on, of a catchphrase, of the instant evaluations. People are so savvy and suspicious. Look at Yelp, right? My kids will look at Yelp only for location. But meanwhile, if you're not on Yelp, they're not going to even know about you at all. They don't believe anything. They think everything is sort of rigged on those rating systems. So I think for the time being, yeah, it's really hard. People are in their own cocoon. There's, what episode of whatever are you on? I don't know. I haven't seen that yet. Have you watched the show? Someone recommends a show to you. There's someone recommends Mad Men to you. There is basically at least a month-long commitment if you have a job to watch all of it. And if you don't have a job, okay. But I sort of was like, it's got to grab you 5 seconds into it.
Right.
And you're just off in that zone with that show. So I don't know if I'm just an old person who misses the experience but it happened when I was on The Sopranos. I remember, because I was living in Los Angeles. I got taken to New York to work on The Sopranos, and that's when the VHS really started to take. It was deep into VHS, and my parents could use it already.
Right.
Right. You know what I mean? It was talking about 2002. It's very deep into the process, but it was always complicated. Right. But now they can do it. Or HBO is going to show it 3 times. That also was part of it. But I would go to my kids' school, having returned from working on this show, and it was like playing for the Yankees. The fact that I was at this school. I mean, there were a lot of TV writers there in Los Angeles at our kids' school, but the idea that I was on the show, it was a big deal. And walking in on Monday morning or expecting an email or something, and no one's seen it.
Right.
And then getting privy to numbers from HBO about the on-demand and about how many people are watching it. More people are watching it than ever. But they're watching it on Monday, they're watching it on Wednesday. And I worked in a TV room, in a writer's room, where we would, just a couple of years before that, where we would, you had to leave the room. We're going to talk about The Sopranos Monday morning. If you didn't watch it, get out.
Right.
There's no,
Right.
And guess who Kaiser Soze is? I mean, it's like, get out.
Right.
So during Mad Men, during The Sopranos first and then during Mad Men, I just started seeing okay, well, I think, and I had people that were like, can you send us the DVDs? And I was like, sure. But people would tell me I like it. It's the last show on. I look forward to seeing it. I'm going to watch it on Sunday night. I might delay it a little bit because I got my neighbors coming over for dinner. That process, I don't know what its relationship is to advertising, but I know from reading about how advertising works, and that has not changed. That has not changed at all. All the things that we know to be real about advertising, repetition, the music, all the aspects, the benefits, the unique selling propositions, all these things, that's real. That really, really is, it's the only thing you have to go on. So if it's not real, you're really screwed. those things, they are more appealing in an environment, in an entertainment environment that is pleasing to people, and that is social.
Right.
So
that's right.
I wonder what that is. And I can tell you that people who type along while they're watching the show, that has also, they may tweet during it, but tweeting's not really as much of a conversation. There's not as much chat going on. So just even in the last 5 years, my kids do not tweet while they watch shows. My kids don't tweet anyway. My kids hate Twitter. They're post Facebook. That to them is, it's like, talking on the phone. They don't do any of that.
Right.
There's like a Snapchat, quick communication. It's one-sided. It can go unanswered for hours, and they just have a very sort of chill thing about it. I have boys. I have heard that it's socially different for girls, at least in where we live. But so I don't know if I have a nostalgia for watching everything together, or if the event is part of creating an audience. I do know one thing about binging. The scarcity of product, it is supply and demand. And people have watched Stranger Things, the 8 episodes of Stranger Things, and waiting for them for a year is not bad for that show.
Right.
And if they had peeled those off 1 week at a time, they would have had 3 times the audience by the end of it. I am positive. Now, has the audience just sort of grown over the last year? Great. We'll see what the premiere is.
Right.
We're not going to see because Netflix doesn't tell, and
Right.
they don't have to. But our people, our kids and adults, our kids going to get, here's the old model. Our kids going to tell their parents, you have to get Netflix so that I can watch Stranger Things.
Right.
I think so.
Right, that's what's going to happen. I know we're just about out of time, but I wanted to take a question from the
sorry.
audience.
No, we
it's
can have
been
a couple
great.
questions.
And I have
can
like
take-
20 questions I can
Yeah,
ask
I'm
you
sorry.
more. Does anyone want to ask a question from the audience? A little hard for me to see. I'll look around. I apologize for not seeing the face, but I see a hand right there.
Mike now. Okay, great.
Hey.
Greg Smith. The question first off, I want to say, Matt, thanks so much for taking us through kind of how these programs now get sponsored or really kind of funded, and international being a big part of that. I'm curious if things are going. What about programs outside of the United States? Are you seeing kind of the opposite happening as well? I mean, save for let's say the UK and stuff like Downton Abbey. Is there a whole kind of treasure trove of content out there that's international coming to the U.S., or is that an opportunity?
It's happening. It really has to do with how much money they'll spend over there. Something like Downton Abbey is like the perfect example. Downton Abbey was bought by a woman, a talent scout, if you would, an executive at PBS for, I don't know, $100,000 an episode to broadcast in the United States, and then ended up moving off of PBS Masterpiece into the BBC America, which is ad-supported. I mean, it was gigantic, right? And getting like 12s and 14s, and then ads came to PBS, as you know. So you can look for them. I mean, I think there are things that are being. I'm doing my show. I'm shooting for them outside the United States, for this very reason. Not to encourage the international market. I know we're in an anti-globalist environment, rhetoric-wise, but economically, this is it. This is the way it works. There's no way to stop this kind of trade, and nor should we. And on the one hand, the negative version is, I don't know if it's really negative, but when Greece fell, when Rome fell, their last export was their culture. And no one was more popular in ancient Rome than Euripides. And it goes on. The Romans kept exporting it after that. And I feel like this is, and the British, certainly in the middle of the 20th century, the British were, so much of American culture was British.
Right.
I feel like this is, if they are doing it, they're doing imitations of American shows. But the old model of like, hey, there's this tiny Israeli show, let's remake it, it's Homeland. That seems more likely that Homeland itself in Hebrew would be here on American TV, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I mean, there's talented people all over the world, and the language of entertainment seems to be more international than ever. As I said, and people in America watching things with subtitles is something I never thought I'd see in my life. I mean, there was, foreign movies and stuff like that, but you'd never expect that on TV. So, yeah, it goes both ways. The interesting thing is that the money to make these shows is government money in other countries, and that means that often they don't want to spend the money to make a show. They would never, the French government could not pay to make Game of Thrones. They just couldn't. One episode of Game of Thrones is what they'd spend on an entire series. That's now. We'll see. And I'll take one more. I know you have to go, but I feel like I said nothing for so long that no one else got to talk.
I have so many more questions, but I know
Okay.
we're out of time, and I'm going to ask you privately, I think is the way to do it,
Okay.
because I am fascinated by this conversation. So, Matthew, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you for having
Greatly
me.
appreciated.
I appreciate
Warm
it.
round of applause for Matthew. Thank you.
My message, my only message, and I had said I'm here because you asked me to be, but my only message is that what I've learned in this changing world is that even though it's called a risk for a reason, because it can be a disaster, but the people who take risks, and I mean financial risks, the people who go into the place where nobody else is, or buy the most expensive thing and do for a different purpose, I've watched it be rewarded over and over and over and over again. And I know it's easy to say, but I just can't get over how that's been proved to me in this environment. And you don't know who your audience is going to be. You don't know if you're just going to be popular with guys my age who have a certain kind of car. But I really encourage all of you to just, whatever the cliche is for taking a risk this year, take a risk and put your money there. And it's so much better than just following half-assed along the pathway that looks the easiest, the easiest way to go.
Take risk. That's the last piece of advice. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us at our Full Frontal 3rd Annual event. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.